Today you join me working on some small dry points. I'm going to print them and embellish them with some watercolour and probably some gilding as well. So I'll take you through the process that I used for that. So that's the size of the Drypoint plate that I'm working with. It's a plastic plate and it comes with two coatings which need to be removed before you start engraving it. So you have one which is clear, and then on the other side one which is semi-opaque. So dispose of those. You're then left with a clear Drypoint plate. When these are cut, there's just a little bit of an edge on them, a burr there, which is the characteristic that you want with this plate, because that's what you're going to achieve when you're scribing into it with a fine point. So that's the size I'm working with, just to show you some ideas of what I'm going to be trying to have the prints look like. These are a couple of drawing ideas that I've put down on paper. So these are the starting points, and I'm not going to be doing a tracing of these as such. You can see they're a little bit bigger anyway. So I'm going to be drawing directly onto this, making the drawing or composing the drawing as I'm working. You can see that I've got a sheet of black paper in the background which helps me see what I'm drawing while I'm working on it. Obviously you can't see that, but here's what I've done a little earlier, and I think you should be able to see. Ignore the dots for the moment, but that will come into effect later. I'll explain that as I'm working along on it. But you can see here that I've got a fine line with it, and it shows up a little bit better than on a piece of white, a white background. So I'm going to begin by just chamfering this edge here that I want. It's quite sharp and it's going to hold a bit too much ink along the edge, which is not what I want, which I don't want. So I'm going to remove it using just a scalpel by the edge of it, and I've lifted the plate by putting it on a box so as I can get an angle with the blade like that, and I'm just going to scrape it along this edge just to make a chamfered edge to it. You're just taking a very fine shaving off. That's it. That will do fine. So do that all the way around. That's better. So the chamfer is going to be around about 45-degree angle, but it's just depends how deep you want it to go. I'm not particularly bothered about having such an acute angle to it. I just want to take that bit of burr off the edge of it here. This one here, you can just feel it with your thumb and it's quite pronounced. The Drypoint plastic's quite soft, so it will just be removed very easily. Yeah. That's fine. Yep, that's good. So just remove all that bit of dust. Remove my box. Get rid of those little bits. And then we can start drawing. So you could use anything that's a sharp needle point on it. You could use a compass. I've got a Drypoint tool here. The quality of the line, it depends on how sharp your tool is. If it's a broad point like that, you're going to get a little bit of a more broader line. I don't know whether you can see that. Let me see if we can take it higher and the camera will focus into it. No, it's not doing it. Okay, so there's that one, or maybe one of these which is slightly more, a slightly finer point to it, which will give you a finer line, not quite as broad as the other one. So you can get different qualities. You can also increase the pressure when you're drawing to get different qualities in the line. So I'm going to start off by just the same method that I've done with the watercolours, and I start by just a zigzag line. Like so. I think you can see that, I'm not sure. I'm going to bring one of my other lights over here a little bit. Just adjust this one a little bit as well, so as my hand's not in the shade and you can maybe see a little bit better. Okay, so I've started with that, just a zigzag line, so now I'm going to add another one to it. So we've constructed our first four-sided shapes on the plate. So I'll continue with this. I can adjust the direction of the four-sided shapes by just pulling the line a little bit longer in a different direction. Seems to work okay. I'll turn it around and then continue. Okay, so I'm not sure whether you can see that. I'm sure you must be able to pick up something with it. There you can see it, that's the start of it. So I'll work on this a little bit more, then switch the camera on again. So now I've got the first element of the drawing in place on here. You will pick up bits of it in the light as it goes around. So the next part of the work is going to be increasing some shapes, creating some shapes on the sides here, which will interact with the bit that I've drawn. So to start these off, I just randomly will put some dots around. With that, so I've created some dots, so I'm basically doing dot to dot. So again, taking the Drypoint needle and just drawing the lines connecting these dots together to make the zigzag that I'm going to work with. And I'll just build up the four-sided shapes originating from these dots. They are just a very basic shape, but they will interact with the other form that I've drawn on the plate there. So I'm going to add some more dots now, which will be significant with the shape in the middle. And then we'll do again basically some dot to dot things. So the dots correspond to the points of the four-sided shapes, and I'm going to draw connecting lines to these dots to emphasize the shape, I suppose. And I'm going to use one of the other etching needles for that, Drypoint needles for that. So here we go. Let's start here. You can probably hear the rain on the roof. My studio's in an attic space, and I have the window open because it does get quite warm in the summer, which is coming to an end at this point. And the rain's coming down, and I'm going to have to stop because it's probably coming in through the open window. Right, so that's completed the drawing using the etching needle on these Drypoint plates. The dots I'm going to add some carborundum to, so they'll be a little bit more defined I've drawn the dots on with an acrylic pen, one of the Posca pens, which I find really useful. So those are points. These pink acrylic dots will disappear, and most of them, or maybe some of them, or maybe all of them, will have a dot of carborundum grit stuck to them to hold extra ink as I'm printing. But first I'm going to just try and, I like to sort of get rid of the clean background on these, and the way I do that is just by scuffing them up a bit, so you get some random marks which give a quality to these dry points, which I find really good, really interesting. And I scuff them up by just putting them on the floor and just rubbing them on the ground, just to get some random marks. It doesn't take a lot. It just gets away with that clinical background that you get with this very smooth Drypoint plastic. So I'll do that next, and then we'll do the carborundum. So I've scuffed up the surface and I've got some random marks around, and we'll just wait and see what it looks like when we print. But what I'm going to do now is add some carborundum dots around. And the way I do that is by taking some good strong wood glue, and for this I use this, which is the Gorilla brand wood glue, which is excellent. I find it really good. So I'm just dipping my brush in. I've got a fine point on here, and then I'm just going to add it to the dots where I want this to sit. It's quite warm in this room, so I've got to work quite quickly with these, otherwise it will dry out. So yeah, I've got some dots on there, and now take some carborundum grit, which is a really fine powder-like grit, and I'm just going to literally just sprinkle it over the top of this wet wood glue, and hopefully it will stick in it and set hard. Yeah, I've covered that area, so, and then I'm just going to shake it off so you can see the dots have carborundum grit in them. That's fine. Need to let that dry thoroughly and hard, and then it's ready for printing, unless I do any more on it, which I probably will do. So you can see I've got a sheet of paper here, which I'll just pour this back into the carborundum grit container. Ready for the next one. You can be quite generous with the amount that you sprinkle over it, because it all just goes back in the pot. So yeah, there we go. That's all right. So I'll just leave that to dry, probably for a day, and then we're on to the printing.